Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Brownstone. I'm your host, Dr. Michele, and you're listening to Numbers Don't Lie, where you learn to get out your feelings so you can make the best decisions for yourself, your family, and your business. I have a very special treat. I'm going to be doing something very good and much needed for the listeners. And that's really talking about sensitive topics that are very important to our community. It needs to be said, it needs to be heard, and we need to be informed about what's going on so we can make really great decisions for our family and ourselves. So, I have a panel of Black women doctors. These are all women that have PhDs, they're knowledgeable in their field. Most of them are in the public health sector or they work somewhat in that dynamic. And so I'm very excited to kick off this series of Black women doctors on this very special panel that I'll be bringing to you throughout the year. So this will not be the last time that you hear from these group of wonderful women. So we have Dr. Lons joining us again. You've heard her before. She's an amazing person. She's one of those really smart people, but wears many hats as well. She loves helping people and serving. I'll let her tell you more about herself. I have Dr. Venice Haynes. I was in my epidemiology program, and she was in another program in the Arnold School of Public Health at the University of South Carolina. So she has a lot of knowledge to bring as well. And then finally, I met Dr. Jasel just last year, and her and I just share so many different things. Like we have so many things in common, from fitness to our passion for public health and epidemiology. So we're going to have a great time today. We're going to be really talking about barriers to preventive medicine as it relates to Black health. So let me bring my panelists on up and we're going to dive in. Hi, ladies.
Hi, Dr. Michele.
Thanks for having us.
I'm so excited. So let's just go ahead and get these intros out the way so we can get to the good stuff. So I'm going to start with Dr. Lon. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I'm Dr. Shalonda Ingram. Most people call me Dr. Lons. I'm a neuropharmacologist, and I got my PhD from Meharry, where I'm working at now, also faculty there, and research faculty. And in regards to like how everything that I do relates to this, everything that I have going on right now is public health. Even my research driven, I started off in addiction research, which is very big in the minority community. But now I'm more interested in like trauma and the generational trauma, how it affects us, not just how it affects our mental and emotional health, because that's kind of my thing, biologically and neurologically, but also some of the constructs of the public health side, which is where a big part of my research goes. And then my nonprofit does about a good amount of this as well. So this is kind of hitting a few different areas of everything that I do on a daily basis.
I told y'all. Didn't I tell y'all? All right, I'll let you go next. Dr. Haynes.
Thanks, Dr. Michele, for having me. It's always good to connect. As she said, we went to grad school together, different departments, but intersected a lot. I just want to say shout out to Meharry, Dr. Lons. I got my MS, Master of Science in Public Health at Meharry. Yeah. And it's really where I got my public health roots, particularly in health disparities, social determinants of health. And from there, I went on to work at Morehouse School of Medicine. I really got grounded in understanding social determinants even more, and really got to cut my teeth on community-based participatory approaches in research with a lot of chronic illnesses. But one of my specialties was breast and cervical cancer and women's health. And I loved that, latched onto it, and built that trajectory out, that research trajectory in cancer. When I got my doctorate in health promotion, education, and behavior. And it's interesting. I had an interesting journey, working in cervical cancer and underserved communities and global communities, particularly for women of color and all that we were facing. But when I had the opportunity to get into the workforce, I took an interesting and needed pivot into the health policy space. And I got to go back to the roots of the health inequities and social determinants on a systematic level. So I'm really, really excited to be able to work at United States of Care and listening to people all across the country about their pain points in the healthcare system, and really excited to bring some of those perspectives and just, the experiences being out in the community to this conversation.
That's phenomenal. I just went to a conference recently, so I'm like, yes, those voices are needed in the policy side. So glad you have a seat at the table. And last but of course not least, Dr. Jasel, tell the people about yourself. Because I've had Dr. Jasel too. So I was like, I gotta have you back. And so she's back, y'all.
I am back, and I'm so excited for this conversation and just all of this Black girl magic on screen. Um, we are so underrepresented in the field of public health, even though it's grown so much in the past 15 plus years. But there's still so much need for representation. So this makes my heart happy. But I am a doctor of public health as well. I also specialize in preventive medicine and nutrition, and I'm also a physical activity epidemiologist. And so I really focus on healthy living, healthy lifestyle, and using that to interject the daily life into health policy and making sure that the community's voices are heard and how these policies are translated to impact all of the domains of wellness. So not just our physical health, but our emotional health, mental health, environmental health, occupational health, all the things that make us who we are as people. I'm the founder of the Heal the Public Collaborative, where we connect and we provide culturally relevant services and programs that integrate all of these 8 dimensions that I'm talking about of well-being into improving specifically diabetes and hypertension outcomes in communities of color. And those 2 particular conditions have significance to me because, for one, my father died of diabetes complications and my mother has hypertension. And there's so many countless other people who have family members or they themselves have those conditions, and they are completely preventable. I am also the founder and chief clinician of the Viv Wellness Academy, where I provide a variety of different services, including nutrition coaching, consulting, and healthy living products. I've created over 40 different ebooks. I'm also a published author where I help people start to integrate plants into their nutrition. Most people, I am not going to hit people over the head and tell you need to be plant-based. But one thing that I can say is that most people, especially those who are melanated, do not eat enough vegetables, period. They just do not. And so I specialize particularly with women over the age of 35 who have hormonal and metabolic issues. And so people who have PCOS, any type of hormonal situation, come talk to me.
I love it. Can I just say both of y'all are speaking my language, so I think we need an off-camera conversation.
I know.
Because you guys are speaking my language. I think I found my village.
Come on, the last time I did a panel of women, it was like they all became like best friends. I'm like, I love it for us. Just
y'all
find
are
your
talking all
friends.
in my language. I love it.
So before we get too far into the discussion, I did just want to share with the listeners. I feel like I lost my place in here. It was just a good string of great graphs. So I want to share with the listeners just some data, just where we are in healthcare. Because I think a lot of times people maybe hear health disparities, maybe you don't understand what it means. But when we talk about disparities, disparities mean differences. And if you do not know, when we talk about health, and we mean like across the gamut of health, most health conditions outside of skin cancer, but most health conditions, there is a gap between the health of white Americans and Black Americans and other ethnic minorities, where ethnic minorities have worser outcomes. So I'm going to share something with you, and I'll just kind of talk through it as I'm sharing it. So we see this is called, it says age adjusted death rate. So we're talking about, we now can really compare people regardless of age. So the death rate, so we see for ethnic minorities, 46.3. This is the rate. Just don't even necessarily worry about like what it means, but just know it's higher than white, which is 22.4. And the rest of these are ethnic minorities. And we see Asian is the only one that's lower or comparable to white. But I can literally go from graph to graph, and we constantly see something like that. Cancer, that's in 2019. Cancer deaths higher for Black Americans. I mean, we can go on and on and on. COVID infections. So this is not something that's just like, oh, this is kind of what we talk about amongst our circles. Like, this is real. It's happening. There are, I know some of you mentioned interest in maternal health. We're going to get into that maybe at another time, but it's permeates so many different things. So and I'll make sure I drop this link so you can take a look at it for yourself, because I love the Kaiser Family Foundation. They put out excellent work and excellent research. They do a great job of just how they're able to collect all that information. But I mean, that's what research is supposed to do, help you inform so you can make better decisions. And if you pass it up to the health policy level, because without data, you really can't tell that story of what's wrong and how can we fix it. So I just really wanted to level set and really paint that picture of where we are in health. And when we come back, we're going to really get into what does this mean? What conversation should we be having? So hang tight. Did you know that data-driven organizations were 19 times more profitable? 19. You heard me right. Perhaps you're asking, what is data-driven and how do I become one of those organizations? I'm so glad you asked. I want you to go take a quiz. It's a simple, quick quiz to help you assess if you are in fact one of those organizations. Head over to mogulbeginnings.com/data into dollars quiz now. That's mogulbeginnings.com. You can just go to mogulbeginnings.com and it'll show you the data into dollars quiz. Take it now. You'll see if you're on your way to 19xing your profitability. You're listening to Numbers Don't Lie on KCCR Cityscape. We hope you're enjoying the tunes and all the jams. Make sure you visit our website over at brownstoneworldwide.com to learn about all things Brownstone. You can check out Brownstone Living Magazine and all the great things that we have on the website, as well as the shop. You just got to head over to the website, brownstoneworldwide.com. And we're back. So yes, I hope you guys have let that stuff sink in. So now we're going to get into the nitty gritty. Because a lot of those of what we see happening in our world and our health. I know Dr. Jasel shared her story about her father and her mother. High blood pressure runs in my family. I have a plant-based diet, so and before that, I have just a healthy lifestyle. So that's not a part of my story. But I do have an uncle that's suffering severely from diabetes, and mainly it's through diet and exercise. And that is what we call preventative health, like just doing the things to prevent disease. So I want to start there. Like, what does prevention or preventative health mean to you? And anyone can jump in first.
There's so much, but high level, I want people to feel like have a sense of empowerment once they finish listening to this podcast. So I would say from, just a broad community level, vaccinations, whether, there's all kinds of different things, especially our ideas about vaccinations, especially since COVID-19 has come about. However, really looking back at things that we thought were eradicated, that because of the lack of vaccinations, they have resurfaced. I'm not going to get into all of that, but vaccinations are really, really important against influenza, HPV, all kinds of different things. So it's even far beyond just COVID. There are vaccinations that have been tested for decades. For those who are unaware, and make sure that you talk to someone who understands the science behind vaccinations and what's actually happening in your body before you make a decision to vaccinate versus not. But then there will also be screenings. I mean, simple things like we're talking about hypertension and diabetes and also cancers. Many of these things can be detected long before they are ever issues. And that's not even just for adulthood. These are also for children, especially if you know that it's something that runs in your family. You want to make sure, hey, is my lifestyle congruent? My lifestyle choices congruent with me not having these conditions? And you want to have this very real conversation with your providers long before it's ever even a challenge. But then also healthy lifestyle choices. I mean, there's so much I could say, but I'm going to stop talking because I'm sure the other ladies want to talk too.
I'm not going to talk too much on this, but Dr. Martin hit on this, the screening piece of this, and I'm coming from the cancer space. We cannot underestimate the importance of early detection. And you hear that it's not just a catchphrase, it's not jargon. I can't tell you how many times women would go for their pap test and they might find something, but that is actually gold, right? That's the whole purpose of getting a pap test, to be able to catch precancerous cells before they develop into cancerous cells. And it's the difference between a major procedure and even death. I'm not saying this to scare people, but it's a small thing. It might be a little inconvenience, up top. Same thing with our mammograms, but it's what I always like to tell people: you can pay for it now, or you can pay for it later. So I'm willing to bet if you give up that little slight inconvenience now, like, yeah, you might have to take a half a day off of work, or be inconvenienced at your doctor's office. It pales in comparison to hearing later on down the road, I'm sorry, you have fill in the blank cancer. Just take that little extra step. If you know better, you can do better. But I'm telling y'all, you can pay for it now, or you can pay for it later. So I'm gonna get off my soapbox on and hands it to Dr.
Absolutely. I agree with both Dr. Martin and Dr. Haynes on this. And actually, I'm kind of living through this too. Both parents had diabetes. It runs on both sides of my family. Both sides of my family is either well, on my mom's side it's hypertension and strokes and brain aneurysms. On my dad's side it's high cholesterol and congestive heart failure. And for me, I already have a whole different condition called osteogenesis imperfecta, where my bones, I was born with like 12 fractures and broke every bone except my neck. So for me, I have this different kind of sensitivity. Um, so right now I'm living through this. For whatever reason, everything wants to spike right now. So I had already been on that road of like, all right, I'm back exercising. You know how that grind gets you and you try to get your life back. So now I'm back exercising. I'm back not eating whatever I was eating every day. Um, and so I'm actually living the side of let me go ahead and do what I gotta do now, so I don't have to pay for it later, and just doing the work up front. Like as a person that's not only am I like having to like live it, but then I have to go to work every day and like teach them like, hey, so these are drugs that treat congestive heart failure. Like these are the drugs that treat diabetes or glaucoma, all of these things that I've actually seen people deal with in my lifetime. And so just do like I'm like living proof, and even from the cancer space, my mom actually had gastrointestinal cancer, but the
Wow.
she had a mutation that was common. She had the BRCA mutation, but the BRCA mutation wasn't expressed in breast or ovarian for her. It was expressed in it had mutated and overexpressed in her GI tract. And it took, I think it was like 9 months. When we found it, it was already stage 4, and
Yeah.
she was actually going through regular screenings. But it had just become very aggressive because she had acquired Crohn's disease. And so,
Mm.
which Crohn's disease is also, as you know, very it can lead directly to colon cancer and GI cancers. And so we didn't even know she had the particular mutation. And then I found out through my aunt, who was going through breast cancer at the time. They had the same mutation. Had no idea,
Wow.
you know. And so it's that, yeah, you do need to know what, like, get your genetic screening, even if you have no reason to get it. Knowing is better than not knowing. Because I immediately, with
Hmm.
my brother and I, we both, once we found out my mom had, she got next gen sequenced. Me, I was like, listen, this is what what we're not gonna do is play with this. So we got next gen sequencing. My brother and I both got tested, and neither one of us have that gene. But it's just that I told my brother up front, like, we need to know, period. Because that actually tells us whether we need to make lifestyle changes or not, and all the other.
Absolutely. That's good. Knowledge is power. And that's really half the battle, is just getting the information, knowing for yourself so you can make an informed decision. And that's really what this podcast is all about, helping people really frame their conversations differently so they can now say, okay, let's think about this rationally, objectively, so we can make a great decision. So I love what everyone has said so far. And I think it's so plain. It's like it always makes so much sense when we talk about like what prevention is. Like, oh, eat right, go to the doctor, make sure you exercise. And it's always seems so easy. But when you think about those disparities that we talked about at the top of the episode, what are some things that are barriers to particularly our community really doing take some of those necessary steps?
I'm going to start. I'm going to say it starts with knowledge again because,
Mm-hmm.
and I think Dr. Martin probably is going to like jump on this when I say this. Diet, sugar and salt is in everything. And one of the barriers to, in particular, to treating or to preventing hypertension and diabetes is knowing what you're eating and knowing,
Mm-hmm.
I know we hate calorie counting and carb counting and things like that, but that, honestly, you really just need to probably just eat vegetables and fruits. But in the other, in the other chasm of it, actually knowing what you're putting in your body, that I can't explain how much your diet, what you're putting in your body. We can exercise all day long if we're still putting junk in our bodies. That's not going to help us at all. And as a pharmacologist, I'm looking at like I'm I'm trying to differentiate to my students like these are drugs, right? Like anything you put in your body that is not natural is a drug. Even if you're
Wow.
supplementing, like, but you got all these supplements on the market, that's a drug. If you're not absorbing it in natural ways or means of like your basic foods and vegetables, making sure that your body has the proper metabolism so that you're actually producing what you need to and not producing what you don't need to, those kinds of things, that's the number one thing. Exercise just helps your body like almost backwards regulate all the other things that is going on in your body.
That was good.
So good.
She got like the inside perspective. Like she got the microscope perspective.
I'm a pharmacologist. I'm going to speak to this. No, I love it. I completely agree with everything Dr. Long said. And I'm going to keep this simple. My thing with the people, I mean, the barrier to answer your question would be accessibility, whether it is
Mm.
accessibility to good food, accessibility to healthcare. That's the thing. However, I want to empower people to take their power back. Um, because just because you live in an area where you got to take two buses and a train just to get to your doctor's office or to a healthy grocery store,
Right.
that's fine. What I want you to tell, because they have these things at corner stores too. I want to tell you how to do it. Dr. Lons touched on this a little bit. When you are picking out what you need to eat, if it has more than one ingredient, it's not real food.
Mm.
Period. An apple is made of nothing else but an apple. A piece of salmon is made of nothing else but salmon. Real food
Yes.
has one ingredient. So if it didn't come straight out the ground or if it did not have a parent, that is not what you should be eating. Period. Period. That's it. That's that. So whether you get it from Whole Foods or whether you get it from Piggly Wiggly, that's fine. Now we can go into the whole organic versus non, the GMO, and all those other things. And to a certain degree, yes, those things do impact you. However, as long as you are doing everything in your power within your scope of personal influence, you can say, I did my best, you give the rest to God, and he handles the rest. That's that. Um, as far as accessibility is concerned, from our side of things as professionals most of us work in policy to some degree, we need to be advocating for these communities and we need to make sure that the community's voices are heard. So we should be amplifiers of what the community is telling us about said lack of accessibility. So for anybody who's out there listening, if you feel disempowered, you feel like, hey, I have things to say and nobody's listening to me, come find one of us. Go listen, go talk to people who are leading different initiatives in your community. They need to hear your voice and they need you to help drive the conversation.
That's
Absolutely.
good.
Absolutely.
That's right up your lane, Dr. Haynes.
Send them to me. That's what I do. Okay, plus one on Dr. Martin and Dr. Lons. And I'm gonna just say too, yes, accessibility is a thing, but let's take it all the way back because it's not. I'm thinking about people that are on all parts of the spectrum of what they have access to. You could walk to Whole Foods across the street, or you might have to take two buses to get to the healthiest food. Let's break it all the way down to a lot of us are in survival mode on a day-to-day basis. We're trying to make it from one day to the next. We're trying to get through our work day. We got these kids we got to manage. We got this family. We have to make how many decisions, right? In a day's time. And what we eat and where we exercise is usually falls down on that to-do list, right? So what are some things that we can do? And I am talking to myself, team, as I'm saying this to y'all. So I'm not just, preaching. How do you make the healthy choice the default choice? You can't eat it if you don't have it, which goes both ways. You can't eat the sugar if it's not in your house, but you also can't eat the healthy food if it's not in your house, right? So what are some small things that we can break that down into? Because a lot of times when I hear what I'm talking about, people, oh, it's too much work to cook. Oh, it's too much work to shop and do all this. Oh, it's too much work to eat healthy. And you just want to grab that thing and be full and go on to the next thing. Remember when I said you pay for it now, you pay for it later? That stuff adds up. So how can we break these things down into smaller, achievable, empowering choices? And that small change can lead up to that healthy. And before you know it, you're like, oh, I didn't even miss the sugar. I didn't even miss the soda. I didn't even miss this. Because you found that smaller thing, that sparkling water instead of the Sprite, and you just create that smaller habit and build on that.
That's good.
Can I
Y'all
say
bomb.
something to that?
Go, yes, girl.
That was really good.
Girl, yes, you would think I just got off the phone with a patient right before we got on this call. And I call them healthy swaps.
Yes.
Because the thing is about being sustainable is you want to
Yeah.
do things that actually appeal to you.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
for me, like for instance, I love apple pie. Apple pie a la mode does something for me. It makes me happy. Okay. It makes me so happy. And so one of the things that one of my healthy swaps for that is baked apples. And I found my concoction of what satisfies that. And for me, like I know, like for instance, if I'm craving chocolate, my body's really telling me, hey, you have a chromium shortage. Hello, we need chromium. Eat more chromium. I don't know that. I mean, I know that, but most people don't know you're deficient. And so this also helps by eating what your body is telling you that you are craving. This also helps to address those deficiencies, those vitamin and those mineral deficiencies. And you don't even know, you don't have to understand nutrition. Just understand what Dr. Hayes is saying about these healthy swaps. Do things that you like. Hey, you need some bubbles instead of going to get a glass of rosé in the evening. Get some what'd you say? Sparkling water.
Water.
And add a little bit of grenadine in that mug, just a drop to turn it red. There you go. You figure out what your thing is. But it's also, getting back to the root cause of what you were saying. It's really stress. And you talked about all of the decisions we make and all, the analysis paralysis. We are making all these choices. By the time it gets to the nitty gritty stuff, we're so overwhelmed. And that's why when you study like really successful people, multimillionaires, many of them say they talk about the fact that they try to minimize their choices on a daily basis. Many of them have a very strict routine. They wear the same things over and over again. They take the guesswork out of life because it minimizes stress. It's not because they're boring. It's just that they have discovered that if I have to make all these decisions throughout the day, that makes me less productive. I can show up less for myself and everybody else around me. And I think there's something to, kind of unpack there. So I don't know what everybody's looks like, but figure out what is the cause of your stress and start to make a game plan to minimize that stuff.
That is so good. And that I'm sorry, Dr. Lines, but we got to let the people go. Can you believe it? But that's okay, guys. We're gonna have part 2 to this, and we're gonna pick up right where we left off with the stress. And Dr. Lines, we're gonna let you go first because this is such a tip of the iceberg, and this is such a needed conversation. So I hope our element of a little bit of laughter in there helps make this more digestible for you. If this is the first time you're hearing these type of conversations, but we have to save ourselves because no one is coming to save us. So this conversation is for you, for your grandmother, your auntie, your niece. So before we go really quickly, Dr. Lance, can you tell the people where to find you?
On all social media, I'm Dr. Lons_Marie.
Awesome.
And you can find me there.
What about you, Dr. Haynes?
I'm easy. If you go to LinkedIn, linkedin.com, Dennis Haynes, I'm right there.
Perfect. And Dr. Jasel?
You can find me on pretty much every social media platform at Dr. Jazzy Fit, or you can go to my website, drjaselmartin.com.
Awesome. And you guys, you can connect with me on all things Mogul Beginnings. That's MOG Well. And make sure you check me out as well on brownstoneworldwide.com. We can't wait to interact with you even more. Leave comments, let us know, connect with us, and let us know how this episode has helped you. See you guys next time.